So now we're going to pull the glove box out and get down to the stock ECU. I've already written up basically a guide to how to run one wire at a time from the stock ECU to the Microsquirt. I'm going to first pull the ECU, get it out of the way, see how the Microsquirt's going to fit up in there, and then I'll start with seeing how much wire needs to be left on the Microsquirt side of the harness. So let's real quick show you what the Microsquirt looks like, how the harness comes. It's called a flying lead harness. We'll show you what that's all about and show you kind of a little quick thing on the diagram just to give you a briefing on what's going on. I'll try to attach the files in case anybody else is wanting to put a Microsquirt in a Suzuki Cappuccino like this. So you got to excuse my messy toolbox here, but this is the Microsquirt we're working with. Microsquirts are nice. They give you a little diagram on what wires go to what, and then they're even nicer because each one of these wires actually tells you what you need to do with this. Like this one's saying switch 12 volts. That's where we give our power supply. This one is our opto in, which is one of the crank trigger options. The blue and green here are two different banks of injectors, which on this one ironically is going to be done as 2 injectors on one and 1 on the other, since there's only 3 injectors to work with. But then right here, what we've got is my version of the diagram for running the Microsquirt and adapting each wire. So I basically go through, and that 12 volt supply wire I just showed you, that's going to go to our pin 23 on the Cappuccino harness, which is what this is basically the Suzuki's wiring guide that someone has been nice enough to kind of translate into English for us and get pretty close to what we need. Probably more literal than exact, but then come in here and we find pin 23 right there. It says it's a possibly blue and red wire. We're running it to pin 1. It comes right off the main relay of the car. Main relay is triggered coincidentally way back at this junction, which I'm guessing is part of the ignition circuit, and it triggers both the fuel pump and the main relay when the fuel pump relay is grounded. So we'll have all that running like an OEM setup. So let's get started on pulling this out. What we got here, stock ECU. Little tiny thing just tucked up in there. Looks like we got plenty of room to tuck our Microsquirt as well. Honestly, it's probably gonna fit in that stock location. Tied down in. Should work great. That's it. Sure looks, well, it's a Denso, so it makes sense that it kind of looks like a Miata computer, just a lot smaller. So now that we got this out, let's try to get some slack in that cable, get us some working room, and I'm going to try to test fit the Microsquirt. I'm going to try to pull this speaker cover here, which doesn't look too complicated. There is a ground wire that's fouling things up. The owner was complaining about blown out speakers. Check that out. No cone left on there at all. Not too bad a job to get to replace them though. So I'll have to talk him into that one. Now with that ground up, we actually have quite a bit of room to work with here. Always neat to see what you find. Right here we've got a nice little exposed solder repair. Gonna have to figure out what pin this is, but you gotta love it. I guess if you're only fixing one, you can get away with just having loose solder sticking out, but that is not at all the proper way to do things. Okay, diagrams, Microsquirt. Let's see how it fits in the car. I didn't be able to get away with that factory bolt hole. Awesome. So one of the things I like to do on these Microsquirts when I get them is the first thing I do is I strip off the flexible insulation. I'm not a big fan of this stuff. I mean, to each their own, but not for me. Next thing I will do is pull off the cloth tape, because we're not going to be using every single one of these pins, and there's no reason to have all of it bundled up. It's great for shipment. It's great if you know you're going to use everything and it's super remote location. But for us, we're right where we need to be, so we're just going to take that off right away. So then, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the cover of this guy off, because I want to get rid of the pins we're not using. So we're going to pop this insert off. That's going to allow us to get down to the pins themselves, which is going to be hard for you to see. See if I can do a close-up here. So one of the things we do when pulling these pins, oh gosh, learning how to do this on the fly, I am not very good. So we know we're not going to use every single one of these pins. So we're going to go through our list, and we are not using the cans or the second VR input since there's no cam signal. So we're going to be able to remove pins 2, 3, and 4, and currently 5. So if we start at the top, right here's a little number 1. So we're going to know that these 2 blues with stripes, the solid yellow that's going to VR2, and the green that goes along with it, because it's a positive negative signal wire. And then we're going to get down to the flex fuel. The flex fuel is the purple white. We're actually going to use this for AC input, so we know to idle up with air conditioning turning on. So we're leaving that one, but we're going to take off these other ones. So these first 4 wires, then we'll jump over and do that green wire. So these pins are designed in a way where they're clipped top and bottom. And what I will do is I will reach down and I will pry up the top, put some tension on it, pop the bottom free, and they come right out. Well, you only had to undo the top clip and it popped out. Oh, but it snagged. Can't show off if it doesn't let me. Ah, there we go. Keep on trucking. Okay, so that gets us that. We're gonna go over here and jump over and do the green pin. The green pin, if you see, is tucked way up in there. Well, my trick for this is I go to the other side and I push and pull on it, and you can see pin right here is moving on us. So we're gonna pop it out. So far we've removed those wires. We're gonna keep going down our list, see how many more we can take out. Few more out. Looks like it. We thinned it down a little. There's still quite a bit of wires here, but really nothing too daunting when you go one at a time. Now we're going to figure out, after that test fit, how much length we want to have left over. So my goal is to actually make this easier to work with. This has got some tension on this whole process. I don't want to leave that tension. I'd rather have the Microsquirt clip in, have a few inches before we tag right into basically cutting these as short as that cut and soldered wire is. So I'm gonna leave about that much length. So now I need to figure out which one of these wires doesn't go to a that ECU. Any of the wires that don't go to that ECU, I'm probably gonna leave longer. That way I can actually route them, for example, like the ground wire to this chassis point where the old ECU is grounded. I'm gonna share that ground. I'm gonna leave that ground in place and add these to the same bolt location. So I know I need to go in here and get all these black wires that you are supposed to run to a ground. I'm gonna get them separated out so that I don't cut them shorter. But then we also are doing things a little different with this wideband, because we are adding a wideband O2 sensor to this car. The wideband can't really be routed in the engine bay other than just the wiring going to the sensor itself. So everything else is going to need to be long enough to terminate where we need it to be. So we're going to leave O2 sensor, which is a pink wire here, long as well. And then it looks like everything else actually goes to an old ECU pin. So I'm gonna go and cut all of these about 10 inches long. And when I actually test it, I might shorten them up a little bit more, but we'll start there. Everybody has their own opinion on how they prefer to splice wiring. I am a huge fan of non-insulated barrel crimps. The inconvenience of soldering when you're working in an engine bay, or in this situation under a floorboard or under the dash, soldering is a good approach, and by all means, done right, is probably a better approach. Because when you get into some factory situations, people will be crimped and soldered. So that's showing you that they both have their place, they both have their purpose, but for the ease of it and the installability, I go the crimp route just because I can really smash these crimp barrels down really good and tight, and on the dozens of cars I've built, I've had no issues. So just my opinion, take it or leave it, but that is how I prefer to approach it. So let's find out what wire goes where. So we're looking for pin 23, which is supposed to be a blue with a red stripe wire. I have found a blue with red stripe, but these pins, I'm finally finding a number system. It says 7 through 12, 1 through 6, I got 2 through 10, 12 through 22. So the joy of needing pin 23 when there isn't even a pin 23 anywhere, that's a fun one. So let's see if we can make the assumption that we're at pin 22 over here. Do we start on pin 23? Not that I can tell. Let's find a point of reference. What I'm going to do, because this is kind of your worst nightmare situations if you're trying to do this and you don't know what you're working with, is once you get into it and all of a sudden none of the numbers are lining up, you got to find a different solution on how to figure out what you're working with. So I'm going to see if any of these pins are close to pin 23 that I can use the color reference to see from there. So for example, we have a pin 22 which looks like it is BLB. Maybe B is black and not blue. Let's look for a black red. Well, I found a black blue, which there's a black red, but it's pin 10. And right next to it is a BL blue, a blue black, which would suggest this is actually number 23 and 22. Let's see how those numbers make sense. If this first unit goes to 12, then we would have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That's what it is. So the number system is actually just plain wrong. And they just made it confusing. So you count 1 through 12 on the small connector, and then we're using 13 and on the big connector. So basically 13 becomes 1, and we'll go from there. Okay, let's see if our colors actually line up. Just because I got 2 right doesn't mean anything else is going to be right. Okay, let's see what we got order-wise. Pin 1, black, orange. Well, oh no, this is pin, not original pin 1. This is new pin 1, which we are not using. Okay, so we are using pin 3, which is light green red. Pin 3 is light green red. That's awesome. Pin 5 is light green white. Light green white. Perfect. All the stuff is lining up. Pin 4, I skipped that one, is just, it says BL, and that is not, oh no, that's actual pin 4. Oh, this is nice and confusing. So we now actually know what's going on with all of these wires. Except for this one that doesn't want to move out of its own way. Okay. So one by one, we can clip the wire we need and tag it into the Microsquirt where we need it. Okay, I think we basically have this sorted. So this is wonderful. Like, all of that's lining up like I was hoping it would. So let's start this top of the list and start clipping stuff. Okay, so the first wire we're gonna do, we'll just show you one and then we'll jump to time lapse, getting the rest of them done. First one we're gonna do is our 12-volt supply. So it says it is pin 11 on the big connector, which is the last one over here. Once you clip this, depending on how much length you leave, not a whole lot of going back. So we're gonna try to leave enough. If someone was crazy enough they wanted to fix this or undo what I'm doing, they could. So we've got our one wire clipped. Let's see about clipping this tape off too. That way we have a little more we can work with. Now we have slack, we have everything we need. So we've already determined with the Microsquirt plugged in. Oops, gotta put the cover back on. Forgot to show you guys that part. It's real easy. Now that you got your pins all undone, put it on, get it lined up the correct way, it literally just clips on. It's so easy to unpin these amp seal connectors. So if we have this tucked in right here and we want length to work on, and we take this wire, tag it right in at full length, we're gonna have this slop. Well, this slop is gonna be able to tuck in so nicely. So let's crimp our first pin. So the process I do, as I said, is non-insulated barrel crimps. Come in with these nice strippers. Love these things. Pop off enough. Same on this end. Take our crimpers, nice Harbor Freight unit. One thing you have to be careful on, hopefully you'll be able to see this, is right in here, we make sure that the split of this barrel. It's got a little split down the center of when it's manufactured. You do not want to smash that side. You want to smash the other side. So I've had like one time where it got spun and the wires just squished out because it just squishes open the that split. So this is as simple as just smashing them down like crazy, grabbing the other side, fitting it in, smashing it down like crazy. You end up with a wonderfully crimped wire, nice and tight. If you have the forethought, you can heat shrink them. Works really well. Gets a little bit tedious, but it works really well. I like to have accessibility without one-time use stuff, so I just tape wrap it and we've got it started. So now we literally have our length set. So every wire after this we will base on this length. We will basically just hold it up to it, cut them together. In theory, as long as I don't undercut, which maybe I shot myself in the foot here, but as long as I don't undercut any of the other wires, we'll actually have perfect length, and we should be able to make it all wrap up really nicely. So, time for a time lapse. After a little digging, I found that this wire that's been cut, soldered, and redone is the speed sensor signal wire to the ECU, which these cars have speed limiters. If they ever reach 120 kilometers per hour, that it shuts them down. And so that's one of the main things that people like to have removed. And a lot of times why people want the N1 ECU, or I think HKS has a speed buster that knocks this wire out. So we will not even be using it in our ECU, so we will not have any faults from it. And so perks of going standalone, limitations like that are gone.